number 10 spot, we have mice with human butts. Okay, so not exactly human butts per se, but with human anal sphincters, which, if you don't know what that is, don't worry, I didn't either, I had to look it up. An anal sphincter is a group of muscles at the end of the rectum that surrounds the anus and controls the release of stool, aka poop. So anyways, in 2011, scientists were able to create a human-mouse hybrid by bioengineering human anal sphincters out of human nerves and muscles and surgically transplanting them onto their rear ends. Yep, sounds horrifying, but this was in fact an experiment that was done with the hope that, if proven successful, the scientists can help humans by making replacement anal sphincters for them. They were quite happy with their results, as the mice seemed to take well to them as they fused with the rest of the flesh. They even found that the mice could relax and contract them like their own natural sphincters. Wild. Coming up at our number 9 spot, we have the mouse with the ear. In 1997, a team of Harvard and MIT scientists got together to perform an experiment where they put a scaffolding in the shape of a human ear inside a mouse. It was made of biodegradable materials, and so eventually the scaffolding was absorbed into the mouse's body, making a biological ear of flesh and cartilage. This could be removed and actually surgically transplanted onto a human. Whoa, this is truly mind-blowing to me. If this project continued, it could mean great things for plastic surgeons everywhere whom are known to have a hard time reconstructing ears. But of course, this was a very expensive project, so it hasn't been able to continue. I hope the mouse with the ear got to live a long life. And our number 8 spot, we have mice with human brains. This is one of those experiments that makes you wonder what the world will look like in 20 years. This is an experiment that was done in 2014 where mice were given millions of human brain cells. Each mouse in the experiment had about 12 million human cells, to be in fact, and in the experiment the researchers noticed that the human cells tended to take over the mouse brain cells. Move over, we're more powerful than you. The experiment was quite the success, with the scientists discovering that these mice showed that their memory was 4 times stronger than a regular mouse's. Unfortunately though, they had to go through some pretty inhumane practices to learn this fact, including playing really loud music and attacking the mice with an electrical shocking tool. They were then able to measure how the mice reacted the next time they heard the sound. Gosh, memory is such a crazy thing. To think that sound, smell, taste, sight, touch can all cause pain if there's a specific memory attached to them is honestly wild. In today's 7th spot, we have monkeys with human cells. Okay, so you're probably thinking, isn't this possibly a dangerous experiment as humans and monkeys are already super close to each other in many ways? Well, in 2007, Yale University decided to take the risk and find out. They put human neural stem cells into 5 different monkeys to analyze how it would affect Parkinson's disease. The experiment proved to be quite successful, as the monkeys who suffered with the disease all could eat and walk and move way better than they could before. They also observed that the monkeys had no tumors or tremors and no bad side effects. The experiment was quite ethically controversial, even though it was a success, and so whether it continues to be done with monkeys in the future is unclear. In our number 6 spot, we have the human chimpanzee. Another risky experiment, but one that was done when there wasn't a very high concern for human ethics, so aka a while ago. Apparently in 1967, a group of Chinese scientists were successful in impregnating a chimpanzee with human sperm. 2 Chinese scientists have claimed this, but it hasn't been officially confirmed to be true. But from what they have said, they were successful with their experiment, and the chimpanzee was 3 months pregnant, only to be killed in a horrific attack on the lab, and all of their work was destroyed. It is said that this was due to the Cultural Revolution at the time. In any case, scientists have claimed to want to try this experiment again in the 80s, but nothing came of it. Probably for the best, as it has also been said that they plan to use this human-chimpanzee hybrid to drive carts and herd sheep and also send it out to space. This is purely on the basis of it having a human brain, of course. But yeah, maybe ethically not a good reason for creating these creatures. In our number 5 spot today, we have the human mouse. In a series of experiments in 2010, scientists at the Salk Institute were able to create a mouse with almost an entirely human liver. Whoa. In the past, experiments like this were done on chimpanzees, and there was a lot of controversy over this as there was much speculation in regards to the ethics of this experiment. So the researchers opted for mice to be safe. Honestly, you would think that there would be controversy over all animals, but anyways, the project was supposed to study diseases such as hepatitis B and C and malaria. After injecting the mice with the illnesses, the researchers tried testing for a cure. There's been many breakthroughs so far, and so scientists continue to be hopeful with these experiments. In our number 4 spot today, we have the human pig. An experiment was done in the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota to try and examine how human cells would interact with pig cells if they were to come in contact with each other. Through concocting this experiment, the clinic was able to successfully produce a pig with human cells. Yes, it was still a pig seemingly on the outside, but on the inside, half of its cells were human. They injected human cells into pig fetuses, and voila! A human-pig hybrid. Through doing this experiment, they noticed that the pig cells stayed to one side of the body while the human cells stayed to the other side. But every so often, some of the cells would interact and fuse together to make a brand new DNA, a human-pig DNA. Pretty cool. It would be awesome if they would allow these animals to grow so that they can study them to see if they end up being able to do any humanly functions over time, but as such, that is not the case so far. In our number 3 spot today, we have human animal milk. Scientists from Russia and Belarus successfully genetically modified goats to produce human breast milk. Since then, scientists from all over have been trying to make the milk more human. As much as the Russian and Belarusian scientists tried, they only managed to make the milk 60% human with a specific enzyme, lysamine, and the protein lactoferrin being apparent. They are usually found in human milk. Apparently, a Chinese team made a whole herd of cattle, that's 300 cattle, that produced human milk. The goal is to make human breast milk more available in stores for mothers that can't breastfeed and have to resort to formula. There's talk of the same company wanting to create a human milk cheese, and that is where I draw the line. What is the purpose of this? Just no. In our number 2 spot today, we have human organs. There is a scientist named Hiromitsu Nagauchi who was given a $1.4 million grant from the US Army to work on developing human-animal hybrids with the purpose to create a farm of animals that can be harvested for human hearts and lungs. Of course, one of the biggest reasons for these types of experiments is to see if we can find a way to solve the human organ shortage that is needed for transplants around the world. The idea of creating a farm to harvest these organs would be revolutionary for humans and would give a patient a higher likelihood of getting one and surviving. So an incredible cause, even though the idea of doing it, well, I'm glad I don't have that job. In 2017, Hiromitsu and his team created 186 pig-human hybrids that unfortunately was only allowed to develop for 28 days before they were destroyed. Apparently, his team is currently working on a sheep-human hybrid. They have yet to have complete success, but they feel that they are getting closer and closer. Finally, coming up in our number 1 spot today, we have the Rabbit Man. Yes, you heard that correctly. A man that is a rabbit. I was gonna say, something out of a nightmare, but honestly, nah, a pig man would be way more terrifying. In Shanghai in 2003, a team of scientists successfully infused human cells in rabbit eggs in a laboratory dish, creating an embryo of a new creature that was, yes, you guessed it, half rabbit, half human. Apparently, the United States scientists have been trying to perform this experiment for quite some time, but never managed to fully pull it off as none ever survived. In this experiment, the majority of the DNA in the creatures was human, and just a small amount of them was rabbit. Apparently, they never allowed the world to see this creature, as after a few days of growth, they decided to destroy it and harvest it for stem cells. Damn. Why would they go through all of that trouble only to destroy it? We could have possibly had our first talking animal. Oh, humans.
Starting off this countdown, we have the human-monkey hybrid. Guys, I wish this was fake, but it's not. So scientists are currently trying to make human-monkey hybrids. They have high hopes that these experiments will succeed because monkeys and humans are similar genetically. Spanish biologist Juan Carlos Belmonte is working with monkey researchers in China to perform these experiments. So basically, they are mixing human cells into monkey embryos. Their objective is to grow a monkey whose organs are completely made out of human cells. They then would use these animals and their organs for people that need the organs. Of course, this is controversial in a number of ways, as you can imagine.
In our number 9 spot today, we have bees. Before I dive into this one, guys, please don't forget to hit the thumbs up button if you're enjoying the video so far, because it really helps us out. A lot of us know bees is pretty harmless and kind of cute little pollinators, unless of course you're allergic or terrified, but truthfully, bees normally do a lot more good than harm. That was of course until an experiment in the 70s went awry and caused a new crossbred bee. This experiment was to take a regular honeybee and breed it with a bee that was found in Africa that produces a lot more honey, and of course the goal was to produce a manageable bee that would also be able to provide more honey than a regular honeybee would. Well, the bees that came out were a lot less manageable and they didn't even make more honey. After this experiment ended, however, the bees got out into the environment and the 80s saw the beginning of the trouble. These bees are not only aggressive towards other kinds of bees, which creates a huge problem, but they're also very aggressive towards humans. And when these bees sting, their stinger stays with them so they can sting multiple times. Victims of these swarms receive 10 times as many stings as regular swarms. They react to disturbances 10 times faster, and they will also chase the disturbance a quarter of a mile. These bees have actually caused at least 1,000 deaths, so it's safe to say that this is one experiment gone horribly wrong.
Moving on, at number 8, we have the pig-human hybrid. Again, you heard me correctly. Scientists at the Salk Institute for Biological Sciences in California have created a human-pig hybrid. So in 2017, an embryo was placed in an adult pig for 4 weeks. Then it was taken out and analyzed, and the embryo survived and contained some human cells. So their hope is to grow human organs inside of pigs instead of waiting for a donor. Similar to the tests that are being done on the monkeys, as I previously mentioned. No animals are safe at this point.
In our number 7 spot today, we have the wolfin. I wish I never had to say the word wolfin, but unfortunately they do exist. These guys are created when a female common bottlenose dolphin is bred with a male false killer whale. They're extremely rare and have been found in the wild, but unfortunately most of the ones that have existed were bred in captivity. The first recorded wolfin was born at the Tokyo SeaWorld in 1981, and he very sadly died just 200 days later. Probably a prime example of why they really maybe shouldn't even exist in the first place. The first that was born in the United States that actually miraculously survived was at a sea life park in Hawaii in May of 1985. She ended up having 3 babies. The first passed away after a few days, the second passed away at the age of 9, but thankfully the third one is still living. In March of last year, both her and her daughter are still alive, but they still remain in captivity.
Coming in at number 6, we have Ilya Ivanich Ivanov. What a name. But this is the name of the dude that originally tried to create a human-chimp hybrid. Ilya was a Russian biologist who did a number of disturbing experiments in the 1920s. He started with crossbreeding animals. So he managed to produce a zebra-donkey hybrid, a Z-donk, and a bison-cow cross, which is a zubron, and also crossed rats, mice, guinea pigs, and rabbits together with each other. But he decided to take it further with the human and monkey crossing. In fact, he successfully managed to inseminate 3 female chimpanzees with human sperm. His experiments were so famous that 5 women actually offered to carry half-ape babies inside of them in the name of science, which thankfully didn't go through. Or if it did, he did it in private with no one else knowing.
In our number 5 spot today, we have farm cattle. In the 1990s, farmers in India were told that if they crossbred their cattle, they'd be able to breed cattle that could produce more milk, which would of course mean more money for them and their families. This should be amazing and great, right? Well, considering why we're all here today, I think we all know the answer to that question. Different breeds of bulls were brought in and farmers were expecting great things, but they ended up being stuck with cattle that did produce more milk, but also needed way more higher quality food, or else they'd stop producing more milk, and they were less resistant to the local diseases, so they required more veterinary visits. So it's this kind of situation like, yes, they are producing more milk, which will get us some more money, but they also cost us more, and truthfully, most of the times the increased milk production did not outweigh the growing costs.
In our fourth spot, we have Hiromitsu Naguchi. Hiromitsu is a stem cell biologist from Tokyo. Just recently, his experiments have been approved by the government. And let me tell you what he's planning on doing. Basically, he hopes to grow human cells in mice and rats, and then transplant those embryos into surrogate animals. So again, another experiment having to do with growing human cells in animals. So his experiment started by injecting some cells into rat and mice embryos. But those rodents have been genetically manipulated so they can't make a pancreas for themselves. But his hope is that the rodents' bodies will use the human cells to then make a pancreas for themselves. Here's the thing. While conducting the experiments, if they find that the rats are starting to develop a human-type brain, then they have to stop the experiments on them. It's part of the agreement that he has with the government. They don't want a humanized animal coming into existence.
In our number 3 spot today, we have the beefalo. Okay, so beefalo sounds kind of cute and silly, and it also looks pretty normal, so what could be wrong with this one? Well, let's start at the beginning. So, a guy named Charles Buffalo Jones started breeding them in 1906 because the bison population in Arizona at the time was so exceptionally low. So, bison were bred with domestic cattle in order to produce a hardy commercial animal. He ended up just giving up on this and released the animals, who were then managed by the state, and the numbers remained relatively low because of the limited hunting licenses. Well, when the beefalo found their way into a national park where hunting is banned and there aren't any natural predators, the population began to grow by 50% a year. That's wild! So none of this is necessarily bad, but it's the animal's environmental impact that is really the trouble. First off, they're very thirsty animals and can consume 10 gallons each per trip to a watering hole. So they can obviously clear up a water source pretty quickly. Not to mention the fact that they do their business in the water and how their heavy weight compacts the soil. Basically, they have thrown the ecosystem off balance and have pushed out other animals, and the insects and plant life around have also been affected.
In our second spot, we have the breeding gone wrong. If you're a dog lover like Olivia and I, then this story is going to make you upset. In 2010, a woman named Julie Leroy was working as an animal control officer when an owner of a pit bull puppy said she didn't want to keep her. When Julie saw the dog, she was in complete disbelief. The dog had a squished body, huge jaw, a bad underbite, and was oddly shaped. That's because the dog suffered from short spine syndrome. That's because they got the dog from a backyard breeder who was carelessly breeding a bunch of his dogs together. Thankfully, Julie took the dog in and gave her a loving home. But it's sad to see dogs born like this just from reckless people who only have money on their mind.
In our number 1 spot today, we have lions. In the 1980s, the Chatbir Zoo in India started an experimental program where they would breed together a domestic lion, which is a bit smaller and has a less shaggy mane, with an African lion in the hopes that they could be introduced to the wild and help with the dwindling population of wild lions in India. The zoo found 2 African lions that were being used in a circus and brought them in to breed with their 2 Asiatic lions. When the cubs were born, it was clear that this was already a mistake, as the cubs had severely weak back legs. They were having extreme trouble walking, and as they got older, their immune systems started to fail. By 2000, when they had already bred more than 70 of these hybrid lions, they finally decided to stop the program, and all of the males were given vasectomies in order to stop any reproduction. There are laws that prohibit them from killing animals, so they were simply just waiting for them to die naturally. When there's a dwindling population of lions, it's insane to me that they wasted 20 years trying to do this when they could have just simply bred the lions that they had.
Number 10 with Oliver. Oliver was a chimpanzee that was acquired by American trainers in 1960. Now, they instantly thought something was strange about him. His face was too flat, his hair was too thin, his eyes were a strange color, and he also did something that no other chimp does. Oliver walked upright on 2 legs. This led his owners to speculate that he was the product of crossbreeding between a human and a chimp known as a humanzee. It might sound crazy, but Dr. Gordon Gallup of the University of New York said there was reason to suspect that Oliver may be a human-chimpanzee hybrid. Humans and chimps share at least 99% of their basic biological chemistry. Oliver died in 2012, with the scientific community deeming him to be a normal chimp, although a full, complete DNA test was never done. Next up at number 9 now, we have the human-pig chimera. In January 2017, scientists announced they had created a real-life human-pig hybrid hybrid. The embryos they made were only a tiny bit human, less than 0.001%. The rest was all pig, but crucially, it was a hybrid. They only lasted for 28 days, but the scientists felt it was a step in the right direction. They hoped that eventually animals could even grow entire human organs ready for use. How does this one make you guys feel? I know it can be pretty divisive. At number 8 now, we have the Ningyo. The Ningyo is the Japanese equivalent of a mermaid, and in one special shrine, people claim they have a specimen. It's been dated to over 1,400 years old and bears a striking resemblance to the artwork depicting these creatures. Some visitors to the shrine claim that it's made out of stone or wood, but that's incorrect. It is genuine organic matter. Here's the thing though, other people say it's most likely advanced taxidermy, with people splicing them together after death. What do you guys think though? At number 7 now, we have the mouse ear. In 2016, Japanese scientists announced they had grown a human ear on the back of a rat. They used human stem cells injected into the rat. The stem cells developed into human cartilage tissue and molded in the rat into the shape of an ear. Now the aim for all of this is to be able to help children with facial abnormalities and give them fully grown body parts from their own DNA so it won't get rejected. Coming in at number 6 now, we have the half sheep. In June 2017, villagers from South Africa said that the offspring of a local sheep was sent by the devil, but to others though it looked like a human-sheep hybrid. When the villagers called in expert help, even the chief director of the veterinary services said that he thought it looked oddly human. The vets then took it away to study. They suspected it was due to a fever in the sheep's mother that caused the deformity, but the village elders maintained that it was sent by the devil and was born after a coupling between a man and a sheep. Alright, next up at number 5 now, we have the horse baby of Benin. This 2012 story comes from the city of Benin in Nigeria, where a woman gave birth to an offspring that looked a lot like a horse. This all happened in a church, with witnesses saying the mother had to hold on to someone's leg as she went into labor. The priest of the church then warned everyone around to stay clear of the demonic object. In reality though, it is probably just a deformed human pregnancy, or even a total fake, because we only really have this video to go on. Coming in at number 4 now, we have the Russian lamb. This claim comes from a farm in southern Russia in 2015, where a sheep gave birth to a lamb that basically looks like an old man, to be honest. See for yourself though. The video shows the lamb not long after it was born, making sort of odd grunting noises as the mother tried to clean it. The farmer was shocked, and some of the locals thought it was actually a human-sheep hybrid. The general consensus though is that it's just a facial deformity, as the rest of the lamb seemed to be in working order. Moving on to number 3 now, we have the Thai cow. In 2010, a story emerged from Thailand of a cow that had given birth to a very human-like creature. The local people poured baby powder on the body and burned incense in the hopes of cleansing the area of evil. The mouth, head and stomach were certainly quite human-looking, while the hooves were clearly cow-like. Although the local people think this is some evil hybrid, there's a good chance it is just a deformed cow calf. I also think the online hysteria was made worse with these pictures because of the baby powder. It really made this thing look even creepier. At number 2 now, we have the sheep with human livers. In 2005, researchers at the University of Nevada created sheep with organs containing millions of human cells. They announced they could grow livers in sheep that were 20% human. As with other examples we've talked about, the researchers used embryonic stem cells, and they did it for the same reason, to eventually develop fully grown human organs on demand. And finally at number 1, we have the human mouse. The results of this experiment were announced in 2015. Scientists thought they had found the DNA sequence responsible for making human brains bigger than other animals. So they took the human gene for this and the chimpanzee version of the gene and put them into mice. The ones with the chimpanzee brain DNA didn't really have much bigger brains, but the ones with human sequences grew 12% bigger. The mice would not have gone on to achieve human levels of intelligence, but these human-mouse hybrid brains could be a step in that direction.
Now, with the zebroids. When a zebra meets another equine species, such as a horse or a donkey, this happens. Depending on what the zebra gets intimate with, they can produce a zorse or even a zonkey. Just look at these things. They're like so strange looking, but on a genetic level, things get even stranger because the two species species crossbred, such as a horse and a zebra, actually have a very different number of chromosomes that make up their genetic code. Now normally this would be a major hurdle when it comes to two different species interbreeding, but when it comes to zebroids, they're just like, screw you, Mother Nature. On a side note, after hearing the word zonkey, I now know what I'm going to call my first child. Excellent. Trotting in at number 9 now, we've got the growler bear. If you just cannot decide which is the coolest bear between a polar and a grizzly bear, well, meet the growler bear, which is a mix between the two. Although the polar bears are found in the Arctic and the grizzly bears in North America, their habitats do sometimes overlap, and when the bears meet, growler bears are born. One possible explanation for this is that global warming is melting the polar bears' icy homes and forcing them south into grizzly bear territory. But now we are on to number 8, which is the beefalo. And now I'm hungry. Unlike a lot of animals on this list, the beefalo is actually fertile, which means they can produce their own offspring. They themselves are the product of crossbreeding domestic cattle, the cows you see out in the field, and American bison. As you can see from the size and shape of these things, they were bred for their meat production, and it turned out their meat tends to be lower in fat and cholesterol than beef and less damaging to rangeland than cattle. I bet their milk is like steroids. But on that note, we're going to talk about the wolf dog, which is our number 7, and I'm going to give you 7 guesses which 2 animals make a wolf dog. I really hope nobody got this one wrong, because it is, of course, a canine hybrid of a wolf and a dog. Now, usually the parent that's a dog will be a breed that resembles a wolf, so you're more likely to see a wolf being bred with a German Shepherd than you are with a poodle. That would just be weird. Wolf dogs' appearances can vary wildly, and there is no real way of guessing what they'll look like until they're born, because the traits they inherit from either parent can be extremely random. Now, any pet that has wolf dog heritage at least 4 generations back can be considered a wolf dog, so you guys should check your family tree, and if you see a great grandmother that's a little bit too hairy, maybe you're part wolf dog. But next up, we're going to look at the narluga, because that is our number 6. As you might have guessed from the name, these are the product of narwhals and belugas. Now, narwhals might look like a fictional cross between a unicorn and a seal, but they are real, and if they are bred with a beluga whale, they make a narluga. This occurrence is extremely rare though, and the only properly documented example of it happening in the wild was when scientists found one of them on the coast of West Greenland. They can be mainly identified by their massive heads, which has got me thinking that maybe I'm part narluga. It explains a lot. Anyway, we are now halfway through our mashup of the animal kingdom, and we're at number 5, which is the leopard. A leopard is the product of a male leopard and a lioness. The first documented case of this was one that was bred in India in 1910, but they have since been bred in zoos all around the world. Although the crossbreeding of these kind of cats are fascinating to the public, animal welfare groups have criticised the breeding of the leopards. Although they may look really cool, leopards often die as cubs, and if they do make it to adulthood, they have a very painful life with a number of different health problems. So just remember guys, just because something looks cool doesn't necessarily mean it is, like onyx. Onyx sucks. I've been waiting so long for a chance to fit that into a video, but now we're at number 4, and we're looking at camas. If you give a camel from Asia and a llama from South America some private time alone, you will come back months later to find a kama. Well, not quite. They were actually first produced using artificial insemination to create an animal that had the size and strength of a camel, but the more easygoing personality of a llama. Anyone that's ever seen a camel will know they're a bit grumpy. Well, sadly, it didn't go to plan. Camas took after their camel parents and have proved to be very uncooperative with humans. I guess you could really say they've got the hump. Or not, whatever. Let's just move on to our number 3 now, which is Savannah cats. Now if you want something a bit more exotic than a normal house cat, then maybe the Savannah cat is for you. This is what you get when you mix a wild African cat with an everyday domestic house cat. They gained popularity among breeders in the 1980s, but it wasn't registered as an official breed until 2001. Unlike domestic cats, they are very social creatures. They're also bigger than house cats and can reach 25 pounds in weight. And the best part is that Savannah cats actually use litter boxes when they're domesticated. I might get one just to train my cat. Damn you, Sadie. Time flies when you're crossbreeding, and it's already time to announce our number 2, which is wolfins. Now if this list was made purely on names alone, wolfins would win it for me. But before you guys freak out and are like, wow, no way, this isn't real, whales are way too big. Well, you're technically right, but these whales are called false killer whales. They look a lot like killer whales, but they actually belong to the dolphin family. So when you breed them with a bottlenose dolphin, you get the wolphin, which is exactly half of either parent. Their bottlenose parent has 88 teeth, for example, and their false killer whale parent has 44. The wolphin child will sit right in the middle with 66 teeth. Alright, time for a quick recap of all our weird and wonderful hybrids. We've looked at beefaloes, zebroids, and wolf dogs, but the one hybrid in the world that has captured the public's attention and got people interested in animal hybrids more than any other is our number one, and it's the liger. A liger is born when a male lion breeds with a female tiger. They are the largest living cats on the planet. Lions and tigers have growth inhibitors in their genes which help to control their size and stop them from growing too big. But when they produce a liger together, these growth inhibitors don't seem to be active, which means ligers can reach incredible sizes. Some female ligers can grow to 10 feet in length and weigh more than 700 pounds. To make things even crazier, you can then breed male ligers with female tigers and lions.
Coming in at number 10, we have the devil lamb. In South Africa, inhabitants of a village were shocked and disturbed by the birth of a human-looking lamb. Villagers were convinced that either bestiality or witchcraft were at play when the human-looking lamb was birthed, although sadly the creature was stillborn. While DNA samples confirmed that the creature was indeed a lamb, many locals were convinced that the dead sheep was the work of the devil or a bad omen of things to come. Check out this goat at number 9. In April 2016, a kid was born that looked like an actual human kid. A farmer from Felda in Malaysia posted the image of an animal on social media. Unfortunately, the baby goat didn't live very long, but it did indeed look like a hairy bipedal mammal. Some were saying that the goat looked human, but to be honest, I think it looks more like a baby Chewbacca. It definitely has human-like lips and a nose, but I don't know, I'm just sad that this little guy didn't make it. Coming in at number 8, we have this cow. A cow born in India with human features caused a stir in 2017. Cows are seen as sacred in India, so when a calf was born with human-like features, people thought that it was an avatar of the Hindu god Vishnu. Locals flocked to see the calf, which died shortly after birth. Despite being dead, Hindus placed the animal in a glass box and laid it with floral garlands. One worshipper said that God has taken birth in the body of a local cow, which I personally think is a bit extreme. He said that a lot of people were there to worship the cow and seek his blessings. We have another goat at number 7. This one was born in Argentina. A genetic disorder meant that the kid was born with a facial deformity. The farmer who owned the animal presented it to cameras and video footage was uploaded to YouTube. Okay, look at this dog at number 6. Like, really look at it. Look at it in the eye. Are you guys creeped out? Because I am. Tonic, the poodle shih tzu mix, has a very human looking demeanor about him. Like, he looks like he knows things. Pictures of the pooch went viral in 2013 as his shelter photos were listed on Pet Finder. He's definitely very cute, but when I look at him, I feel like he knows more than he should. Like, who was this dog in a former life? Okay, so this is animals born with human faces, but this animal looks like it was very much born with specifically human teeth. We have the Prometheus succulus at number 5. This squid looks like an angry killer ready to bite, like Who knew these critters were living down there screaming silently into the ocean? While it looks like this squid has a human set of teeth, these are actually folded lip flaps. Gross. This squid might be confused if it saw us too, but it's unlikely that we will ever come face to face with it because it lives so far down in the ocean. Coming into number 4, we have this cat with a human face. Although I say human face, it actually kind of looks like a semi-human werewolf. Bizarre images of a cat with a human-like face were circulated on the internet in October 2014. People were claiming it was taken in Western Malaysia. Footage of the creature was also recorded on a phone camera. The creature kind of looks like a cross between a cat and Gollum from Lord of the Rings. It was on all fours and it had fangs, but like kind of a very human-like face. The image caused so much fuss that local police in Malaysia were forced to make a statement saying that the creature was fake. Although, was it actually? Meet this pig at number 3. Now this story actually comes from our sister news channel Inform Overload. Back in 2014, Dave Warple reported that a pig had been born with a human-looking face in Vietnam. First reported on Tomo News, the animal appears to be a pig with a decidedly humanoid appearance, but people in Laos, where it was born, speculated it was the work of bestiality. Which, I mean, that just isn't
how things work. To be fair though, I don't really know how anything works, and I'm ready to question anything I ever thought was true here at number 2. We have this pig with a human face and a human-looking penis on its head. This piglet was videoed gasping for air and was widely shared on Chinese social media. The piglet was the only one of the litter of 19 to have such an unusual deformity. It seemed like it had a human face with the addition of what looked like a flaccid penis on its head, which is extremely unfortunate. Eyewitness Wu Kang was one of a dozen people who went to see the piglet, and he said that it actually really did look like it had a penis growing out of its forehead. There it is. I can't not look at it. Finally, at number 1, a weird but very cute and happy story, we have this lamb that looks like an old man. In 2015, a female lamb went viral when she was born in a Russian village. Sheep are born in Russia all the time, so what was the big deal? Well, this lamb looked like a grumpy old human man. The Russian farmer the lamb belongs to said that she had normal looking parents, it must have just been a deformity. Residents of the town flocked to see the sheep, although it is said that the lamb scared the children. The farmer said that he thought that she was a beauty and refused to sell her to the local circus, and like, isn't that love?
Starting us off at our number 10 spot are horses. Mina Misoma of Fukushima City has a tradition that is centuries old known as Soma no Mao, or in English, Chasing Wild Horses Festival. Sadly, after the Fukushima disaster in 2011, the city became uninhabitable and the festival had to be stopped. The festival ran for centuries and was created to honor the contribution that horses have made to humanity for all time. How sweet is that? Shout out to the ponies in the back. Rancher Shinichiro Tanaka returned to find his horses either dead or starving once he was able to return home. The Japanese government, worried about future radioactive animals, ordered Tanaka to kill the rest of his horses, but he absolutely refused. Instead, he actually nursed them back to full health, and they are now thriving in the lands near Fukushima. There was even a documentary made later based on these horses called The Horses of Fukushima. So there may not be anything crazy about these horses, but to this day in a radioactive ghost town, packs of healthy wild horses can be seen just horsing around. At number 9, we have dogs and cats. Dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria! Shout out in my next video to whoever can tell me what movie that quote is from. Anyway, back to doggies and kitties. Located in Fukushima, Japan is one amazing animal shelter called Neander Guard. This shelter was set up after the Fukushima disaster for any animals that were left behind after the blast. An estimated 20,000 animals were left behind after the events in 2011. Early rescue efforts were organized by 52-year-old Japanese businessman Akira Honda, who then called volunteers to help with his mission in saving the homeless animals. These volunteers usually had to sneak over police barricades and trespass into the radioactive area, but eventually these rescue missions came to a standstill when a good portion of these volunteers were detained by police. Thankfully, the Neander Guard shelter was a government-sponsored solution. Neander Guard has its work cut out for them, but has since rescued thousands of dogs and cats. One of the most famous being a cat by the name of Kevin Costner. Fun fact, I actually met Kevin Costner at a Father's Day event in Iowa celebrating the 25th anniversary of the movie Field of Dreams a few years back, and it was pretty awesome. He signed my glove, he meowed, and then he licked his paw and he ran away. Nice guy. Anyway, if you're looking to adopt a cat or dog, go online and check out some of Neander Guard's cute fur babies looking for love. Who knows, maybe you'll find a Leo DiCaprio. At our number 8 spot, we have nuclear cattle. Just like the horse of Fukushima, the cattle that were left behind after the blast were supposed to be euthanized by their owners too. But, of course, their owners loved them too much and they refused. Instead, farmers kept returning to their animals to feed and care for them using money out of their own pocket. The cows were no longer permitted to be sold due to contamination, so now there are just these nuclear radioactive cattle wandering around Fukushima. Oh, and they're movie stars just like the horses and Kevin Costner. There's also a documentary made about these cows called Nuclear Cattle. Go give it a watch and see if you can see any of their radioactive glows. Just kidding. Coming in at our number 7 spot is traveling contaminated salmon. After the 2011 disaster in Fukushima, people all over the world were worried about the contaminated water that would seep into the Pacific Ocean. This fear wasn't completely unfounded either. In 2016, salmon containing cesium-134 particles, a radioactive substance popularly known as the fingerprint of Fukushima, was found off the coast of Oregon in the United States, about 6,000 miles away. The exact same particles were also found in the Tillamook Bay and Gold Beach, Oregon as well. While this sounds alarming at first, it isn't actually all that bad. Ken Buessler, a senior scientist at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, says that the levels found in the salmon and water isn't a cause for alarm. In one interview, Buessler says, "To put it in context, if you were to swim every day for 6 hours a day in those waters for a year, that additional radiation from the addressed cesium from Japan is 1,000 times smaller than one dental x-ray." So even though these fish aren't that toxic, I still don't recommend eating them nor swimming in the area of Fukushima. There are still radioactive materials being dumped in the waters there, and thanks to the ocean currents, the radioactive materials don't heavily impact the wildlife because it's spread out. But also, how about we don't dump radioactive materials in our oceans? Just a thought. At number 6, we have mutated butterflies. The butterflies found in Fukushima have proven to be quite sensitive to the radiation they have experienced over the years. Butterflies found in Fukushima that have been known to feed on radiation-drenched leaves experienced abnormalities, such as short forewings and differing survival rates compared to normal butterflies. These effects were found to be in many different butterflies in a range of different levels of contamination, some even in levels originally thought to not be harmful at all. But no worries, studies show that these butterflies will continue to thrive and will actually help them evolve to withstand areas with low levels of radiation much better. I wonder if these butterflies have started changing into cooler colors, or once they hatch from the cocoon they just become larger caterpillars with giant wings? Oh yeah, see you in Japan. Coming in at our halfway point at number 5 are the Japanese macaques, aka snow monkeys. All over the area of Fukushima you will find tons of Japanese macaques. These monkeys are known to be quite aggressive and I don't recommend getting close to them if you see one. That being said, I'm not surprised that a radioactive monkey is still a little aggressive. Maybe it's because these monkeys actually have fewer red and white blood cells, which makes them more susceptible to serious infections. The strange thing though, scientists have yet to prove the reason for these strange abnormalities in the Fukushima monkeys. Most people believe it is due to the Fukushima disaster, but nothing is proven yet. Personally, I think it would make sense, but hey, I'm not a scientist. I'm just a dude with a theater degree. So what does this guy know, other than Shakespeare and how to properly project on stage? At number 4, we have wild boars. Once people left Fukushima after the terrible radioactive incident, the wild boars decided to come down from the mountains and take over. And I mean, take over. In coastal towns such as Nami and Tomioka, wild boars can be found strutting down the streets, foraging for food, and even attacking humans who attempt to return to their homes. The mayor of the town even went on record saying, "It is not really clear now which is the master of the town, people or the wild boars." In March of 2017, the evacuation order was lifted and residents returned to their homes, or at least tried. Since then, many of them have set up traps and have started hunting these wild boars in an attempt to take back their hometown. However, these wild boars are still going strong and refuse to leave. Imagine having a standoff with a gang of wild boars in your hometown. Honestly, it doesn't sound that different than the small farm town that I grew up in, because one time at recess, a bunch of the local farmers had to come and herd an escaped aggravated bull off our school playground. Luckily, the entire school was inside when this happened, but for recess, all we did was just stare out the window. Luckily, no one was hurt and the next day we all got to go back to our playground. Maybe I should send some of our hometown farmers down to Fukushima to help with the wild boars. Don't worry, Mr. Aiken, if they ask you any questions, just tell them Dewey sent you. Coming in at number 3 and starting us off at our top 3 spot, we have an earless bunny rabbit. Along with the wild boars in the small town of Nami, there is also an earless bunny rabbit that was born on May 7th, 2011, just after the Fukushima incident. In addition to being born with no ears, this small little rabbit was also born with albinism, or a lack of melanin, making the bunny white with red eyes.
Red glowing demon eyes.
Just kidding. Or am I? The rabbit's birth coincided with an announcement made by Tokyo Electric, stated seawater samples 150 miles north of Tokyo contained levels of radioactive strontium around 240 times the legal limit. Those levels were also found in the groundwater located in and around the area of the exclusion zone. While it was never proven the exact reason for the birth defects of the bunny rabbit, it did bring up questions of what might happen to humans in the time after the disaster. I unfortunately do not know if the earless bunny rabbit is still alive or not, but rabbits usually live up to 12 years. Mind you, that's normal, non-mutated rabbits. So pack your bags and go searching for the earless rabbit. And also just watch out for those wild boars. At our number 2 spot, we have a mutated cat. Mutated animals reached their highest rates 5 years after the Fukushima disaster. During that time period, some animals were actually born with major deformities at birth, such as this cat who was born with 2 heads. Well, kinda 2 heads. It's difficult to say if this counts as 2 heads or 2 faces on one head, but either way, you get the picture. Some even were found to have 2 muzzles or even extra paws. These birth defects were caused by the increased dose of radiation, but I can confidently say these animals are still safer and kinder than those wild boars from the mountains. But cats weren't the only animals with crazy birth defects, which brings us to our number 1 spot. Coming in at our number 1 spot today, we have the mutated goat. Just like the cat with the extra head / face, there was a goat born with 2 extra legs. It is not known if this increased the stability or speed of the animal, but it is known that these extra limbs are caused by the increase in radiation. Many animals in the years after the Fukushima disaster acquired cancer or congenital abnormalities of the skull or limbs, such as this goat. At this time, I do not know what the rates of mutated animals are in Fukushima, but I will say if you plan on going to this area anytime soon, it might be a good idea to bring your own drinking water. So just so you don't wake up the next morning with a couple extra limbs.
Starting off this countdown, we have the growler bear. The growler bear, or the Pizzly bear, is a cross between a polar bear and a brown grizzly bear. This actually happened naturally in the wild, which is kind of hard to believe. Basically, because of climate change destroying the bears' habitats, they started breeding with each other out of desperation, which is actually pretty sad. It's believed that the first growler bear was discovered in 2006. On April 16th, 2006, a hunter named Jim Martell was out hunting when he captured a growler bear. At first, he thought it was just a polar bear, but officials took a look at it and noticed it had strange features. Later, it was determined to be a growler bear. Or Pizzly bear. It's really funny to say. In our 9th spot, we have a zorse. Any guesses as to what this animal is mixed with? Well, it's a mix between a zebra and a horse. Or sometimes a donkey too. Other people refer to them as zebula, or zebrule, or a zebra mule. These animals were created after crossbreeding a male zebra with a female horse. The offspring look more like a horse than a zebra, but they still got the identifying stripes. The first zorse was created during the 19th century by Charles Darwin. Now, they are still around to this day, but they are extremely rare. This is because zorses are infertile or sterile. They can't reproduce on their own. So the only way to get more of these bad boys is to get someone to crossbreed them themselves. Moving on, number 8, we have the jaglion, or jaglion, I don't know. It's a kind of a weird name, not gonna lie, but this animal is a cross between a jaguar and a lion. And these are actually naturally born. The first jaglion was unintentionally bred. It happened when a lion and a jaguar coexisted in the same zoo together. They were raised together and one thing led to another and boom, baby jaglion. Not gonna lie, these things are beautifully terrifying. They are so unique and cool looking, but also I would never want to come face to face with one. Now let me share with you a quick little love story between a jaguar named Diablo and a lion named Lola. The two were raised side by side and were inseparable. When Lola got mature, they kept Diablo away from her so that they would never mate. But whenever they were apart, both animals would grow depressed. It got so bad to the point where Lola wouldn't even eat. So they brought them back together and bada bing bada boom, they had 2 babies together. So cute. Moving on to number 7, we have the human Z. It is so weird and uncomfortable putting this one on the list. But a human Z is a cross between a human and a chimpanzee. Yeah, I already know what you're thinking, but no, not that. Let me explain. Serious attempts have been made throughout the years to cross a chimp with a human. Since we're so similar in a genetic way, people believe that it's possible to do this. Ilya Ivanich Ivanov was the first person to attempt to create a human-chimp hybrid. I believe he started in 1918 and continued these experiences throughout the 1920s. During that time, the Soviet Union was also doing the same experiments. In 2019, rumor has it that a team of researchers from the Salk Institute for Biological Studies in the US successfully completed this. It's kind of creepy, I know. In our 6th spot, we have the Iron Age pig. This is a big, mean old pig, literally. So the Iron Age pig is a cross between a domestic pig and a wild boar. That's just so wrong to me on so many levels. Poor little Miss Piggy. Now, look at this thing. It's huge and looks tough and mean. In fact, they are considered very hostile animals. It's because wild boars are typically more aggressive. That's one of the traits that gets passed along to their offsprings. Now, they get their name because this pig has many characteristics of domesticated animals from the Iron Age period. Hello, there you go, Iron Age pig. It's quite fascinating. These pigs are generally bred in Europe for the sole purpose of selling and eating them. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the green sea slug. As strange as this one is, it's actually really interesting. Honestly though, this has to be the weirdest hybrid on this list. And that's because it's part animal and part plant. Yeah, it's a mix between a sea slug and algae. Yeah, algae. This sea slug was going around eating algae, and eventually the algae became part of its DNA. It's very strange. Soon, green sea slugs were born and contained chlorophyll, just like a plant. In fact, this is the first animal able to make chlorophyll like a plant. They literally can turn solar energy into food. Again, it's quite weird, but also fascinating. In our 4th spot, we have the wholphin, which is really fun and funny to say. So a wholphin is a mix between an Atlantic bottlenose dolphin and a false killer whale. In fact, these are considered very, very rare. The first recorded wholphin was born in 1981 in Tokyo SeaWorld, but sadly, he passed away after 200 days. Now, the first wholphin born in the US was at Sea Life Park in Hawaii in 1985, but she had trouble reproducing. Her baby wholphins sadly passed away. Some say they have seen wholphins out in the wild, but these sightings have never been confirmed. But if you do see one, it's very rare. Coming in at number 3, we have the EnviroPig. Okay, this one, I take it back. This one is probably the weirdest one on this list. Basically, an EnviroPig is an environmentally friendly pig. Basically, pigs' excrements are high in phosphorus. This phosphorus then ends up in lakes and rivers and oceans and can cause a boom of algae. So scientists were like, hey, let's just breed a pig with less toxic waste. And that's what they did. EnviroPigs are pigs with up to 65% less phosphorus in their excrements. This pig was first created in 1999 at the University of Guelph's farm in Canada. This pig had its phytase gene attached to a piece of mouse DNA. Basically, in the end, it made the pig produce an enzyme to help it better digest plant phosphorus, which is a nutrient in its feed. Voila! From there, EnviroPigs were born. In our 2nd spot, we have the Belgian super cow. Now, when they said super cow, they weren't joking, because take a load of this cow. It's monstrous. As many of you guys know, cows are my favorite animal, but this one terrifies me. It's massive. Like, look at its muscles. I'm sorry, but no animal should be as ripped as that. So basically, this super cow was created back in the 1800s when Belgian scientists and farmers mixed native cattle with shorthorn cattle. Then over the time, they would select the biggest and strongest offsprings of each variety and get them to breed together. So on and so on, bam, you got this super cow, which is definitely the biggest and strongest. So maybe let's stop doing that because this cow is soon gonna get too big for its own good and like take over the world or something. And in our number 1 spot, we have the human-pig hybrid. Yes, this is a real thing. Scientists at the Salk Institute for Biological Sciences in California have created a human-pig hybrid. Now you're probably wondering, why on earth would they do this? Well, they did this in hopes that one day they could grow human organs inside of pigs and other animals instead of waiting for a donor. So in 2017, an embryo was placed in an adult pig for 4 weeks. Then this was taken out and analyzed. And the embryo survived and contained some human cells. Now they're going to figure out if pig embryos can handle enough human cells to create human organs. It's very creepy in my opinion. Starting off this countdown, we have the zebron. This is a cross between domestic cattle and the European bison. In fact, the European bison, aka the wisent, was once threatened by extinction, but now they were making a comeback. The zebron were first created by Leopold Walicki in 1847, but scientists didn't breed the first fertile zebron until 1960. In fact, after World War I, a lot of people believed that the zebron was going to replace domestic cattle because of their low susceptibility to disease and their durability. All throughout the 1950s and 60s, scientists were working on creating these creatures in labs. Over the course of 16 years, 71 zebrons were born. Experiments continued to run on these animals until the late 1980s. That's when the experiments were shut down. One of the reasons being they were unsatisfied with the results. But also they were scared that the zebron would crossbreed with the endangered wild wisent and then contaminate the whole gene pool. Now there's just one herd left and it's located in a national park. Moving on to number 9, we have the human rodent hybrid. And if you guys are liking this video so far, make sure to give it a big thumbs up. But you heard me correctly. It's a human rodent hybrid. A stem cell biologist from Tokyo has been trying to grow human cells in mice and rats and then transplant those embryos into surrogate animals. So his experiments start by injecting some cells into rat and mice embryos. But those rodents have been genetically manipulated so they can't make pancreases for themselves. His hope is that the rodents' bodies will use the human cells to then make a pancreas. Here's the thing though. While conducting the experiments, if they find that the rats are starting to develop a human-type brain, then they have to stop the experiments on them. It's part of the agreement he has with the government. They don't want a humanized animal coming into existence. Still, we can say that there are some humanized rodents out there. Moving on to number 8, we have the leopon. Lions, no tigers, but leopards, oh my. See what I did there? A leopon is a mix between a male leopard and a female lion. If you thought leopards or lions alone were scary, wait until you take a look at this bad boy. So the leopon literally looks like it's fake. It has the head of a lion, but the body of a leopard. They are beautiful, but imagine being hunted down by one of those. No thank you. In fact, they can grow to be larger than their full-grown leopard father. Also, they can last 20 years in the wild. On average, leopards live to be around 23 years old and lions only 13, so that's pretty impressive. The first reference to the leopon was made in the 1st century, but it wasn't until 1910 that someone saw one in real life and it was actually credible. But don't be fooled, leopards and lions aren't out there mating with each other. These animals were produced in captivity. They're very unlikely to occur naturally in the wild. In our 7th spot today, we have the Jeep. Or Geep. I don't know how you pronounce it, but I'm not talking about the car here. This is a mixture between a goat and a sheep. It's pretty cute, not gonna lie. But breeding the two can be a very risky game. Very few babies are carried to term, and even fewer manage to survive birth. Those that do survive have a bunch of genetic abnormalities. But people still cross the two together, which is sad because chances are most of the time it'll have a negative outcome. Coming in at number 6, we have the hybrid lions gone wrong. This is a sad example of breeding gone wrong. In 2006, nearly 24 crossbred lions in northern India were dying after they developed a mysterious disease. The disease was a result of inbreeding and a weakened gene pool. Nearly 80 lions were affected by this. The lions being born had weak hind legs and had difficulty walking and couldn't even run. They also had failing immune systems. Now, there's a wildlife law in India which prohibits the killing of animals. So basically, they just had to wait for these lions to die a slow, painful death on their own. It's a very tragic case of breeding gone wrong. Those poor lions. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the see-through frog. Scientists in Japan have managed to create a frog that has see-through skin, which is really freaking creepy if you ask me. So they created this frog by crossing 2 kinds of recessive color mutant frogs together. They did this through artificial insemination. And the offspring ended up producing frogs with translucent skin. Now there's a lot more to it than that, but that's just the simplified way to describe it. Now they actually have a good reason for doing this. Having frogs with visible organs means you don't need to dissect them for medical research. Instead, you can just observe by looking through them. So this reduces the need for dissecting and killing innocent frogs. In our 4th spot today, we have the glow-in-the-dark cats. No, I am not making this up. It is a real thing. Basically, these glow-in-the-dark cats were created in an attempt to stop HIV/AIDS. So the virus responsible for HIV in humans is similar to the feline immunodeficiency virus, FIV. So what they did was insert a gene that produces a fluorescent protein called GFP. This is produced naturally in jellyfish, but it's what gives these kitties a green glow. Then they also inserted a gene that blocks the FIV virus into unfertilized eggs of the cat. When the cat gave birth to the kitties, if they glowed green, that meant they also had the anti-FIV gene. They hope that these experiments will one day lead to them finding a way to make humans resistant to HIV. In our third spot today, we have the infertile pink bollworm. In 2005, the pink bollworm was becoming a huge problem in cotton farming. These invasive pests lay eggs on cotton balls. Then once they hatch, the larvae eat the seeds and damage the cotton fibers. It was getting so bad that scientists came up with this really weird way to get rid of them. Basically, they created sterile pink bollworms. They did this by treating a bunch of moths with radiation. The radiation would damage their reproduction cells, but it wouldn't kill the insect. That way, when they encountered a normal pink bollworm and the two mated, bam! It would create an infertile pink bollworm. So for 4 years, 2 billion pink bollworm moths were released into Arizona's cotton fields. They literally would fly an airplane above the fields and then drop millions of these moths down onto the crops. And thankfully, it worked. Imagine if their plan didn't work. There would be billions more pink bollworms out there. It could have destroyed the crops completely. Even the scientists admitted that it was a very risky move. Coming in at number 2, we have the killer bees. Did you know that killer bees were accidentally created by scientists? See, this kind of stuff scares me. Like, what else have scientists created by accident? Basically, in the 1950s, a biologist was commissioned by the Brazilian government to create a species of bees that would increase honey production. But along the way, things went wrong. The biologist himself didn't have much experience with animal breeding. In the end, bees from southern Africa and local Brazilian honeybees made it, and it produced these angry killer bees. And then, of course, thousands of these killer bees accidentally escaped. Now, they get their name because when pissed off, they have been known to chase people down for more than a quarter mile. And on top of that, their stings are very painful. So these bees were literally created in a lab by accident. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the rabbit man. For this one, we have a hybrid between a human and a rabbit. Again, I'm not making this up. The first successful experiment was done in 2003 in Shanghai. A team of scientists managed to fuse human cells with rabbit eggs. In the United States, scientists have been trying to do the same, but their attempts have been unsuccessful. But in Shanghai, they managed to pull this off. This experiment was done to see if it could be used to grow cells or tissues for transplant patients. But in the end, they only allowed the human rabbit to develop for a couple of days before they had to destroy it, and then just harvest it for its stem cells. Either way, they still created a human-rabbit hybrid.
Number 10, a wolfen. A wolfen is part whale, part dolphin. The existence of wolfens have been a legend for centuries. Known in fisherman lore as the Great Gray Beast, they come from the mating of a female bottlenose dolphin with a male false killer whale. Now, a false killer whale, by the way, is not actually a whale. Both these animals come from the oceanic dolphin family with the toothed whale suborder. Wolfens are one of the rarest hybrid animals. Citizen wolfen sightings in the wild are common, but concrete evidence still eludes scientists. Currently, we can only reliably see these animal hybrids in captivity. Wolfens are an extremely interesting balance of their parents as well. Their skin is a dark gray, the perfect blend of light gray dolphin skin and black false killer whale skin. They also have 66 teeth, which is the precise average of a dolphin's 88 teeth and the false killer whale's 44 teeth. To me, these look weird and they kind of make me uncomfortable. Number 9. Wolf dog. A wolf dog, also called a wolf dog hybrid or wolf hybrid, is a candid hybrid resulting from the mating of a wolf and a dog. The term wolf dog is preferred by most of the animal's proponents and breeders because the domestic dog recently was taxonomically recategorized as a subspecies of wolf. The American Veterinary Medical Association and the United States Department of Agriculture refers to the animals as wolf dog hybrids. Rescue organizations consider any dog with wolf heritage within the last 5 generations to be a wolf dog, including some established wolf dog breeds. In 1998, USDA estimated an approximate population of 300,000 wolf dogs in the United States, the highest of any country worldwide, with some other sources giving a population possibly as high as 500,000. In the first generation of hybrids, gray wolves are most often crossed with wolf-like dogs such as German shepherds, Siberian huskies, and Alaskan mammutes for an appearance most appealing to owners desiring to own an exotic pet. Because wolf dogs are generic mixtures between wolves and dogs, their physical and behavior characteristics cannot be predicted with any certainty. Number 8. Zebroid. A hybrid between a zebra and any other member of the equine family is one of the most common in the animal kingdom. In most cases, the sire is a zebra stallion, the mother could be anyone. Known collectively as zebroid, the name of the breed depends on who the mother is. A fowl could be a zorse, zebrel, zonkey, zebunky, or a zony. Zebra hybrids usually have the appearance of whichever animal they have been crossbred with, while still retaining the striped coat of a pure zebra. Now, most of these animals don't have fully striped coats. Instead, the stripes are usually found on just the legs or non-white areas of the body, depending on the genetics of the non-zebra parent. When it comes to zonkies, donkeys are closely related to zebras, and both animals belong to the horse family. These zebra-donkey hybrids are very rare. In South Africa, they occur where zebras and donkeys are found in proximity to each other. Today, various zebroids are bred as riding and draft animals and as curiosities in circuses and smaller zoos. Number 7. Growler bear. Known variously as a pizzly bear, a growler bear is a grizzly and polar bear hybrid that is a rare hybrid within the Ursidae family. Tales of such creatures were told within the First Nation communities of North America down the centuries. But it wasn't until DNA samples were taken from a strange looking bear found near Sash Harbor in the Canadian Arctic in 2006 that their existence was finally confirmed. Growler bears are interesting because, generally speaking, polar bears and grizzlies have a mutual contempt for one another and will rarely coexist in captivity or in their natural habitats. However, extreme situations and human interventions have produced more of these adorably shaggy caramel-colored hybrid bears. They typically grow to be slightly smaller than polar bears, averaging 60 inches tall at the shoulder and around 1,000 pounds, but they're better to be able to survive in warm climates thanks to their grizzly bear genes. Number 6. Jag lion. A jag lion, sometimes referred to as a jaguan, is one of the many portmanteaus used to define hybrid species of animals. In this case, it is a blend of two cats, a lion, and a jaguar. Both belong to the genus Panthera. Their genetics aren't too far off. It's not surprising that they're able to mate, but they are extremely rare. A jag lion is the offspring of a female lion, lioness, and a male jaguar. To date, there haven't been any matings of a male lion and a female jaguar, so that hybrid doesn't have its own special name. Now, spots are definitely a dominant gene, and any speckled big cat is sure to pass them on to their offspring. And like its mother, the jag lion club has a distinct tuft of hair at the end of its tail. It wasn't until the 21st century that this crossbreed became known to the world. Before this century, there hadn't been any record of such a cross being made, despite experiments in crossbreeding lions, leopards, and tigers. They are rare. And how rare is extremely rare? Well, right now there are only 2 jag lions in the world. They live in Canada and they were bred unintentionally and are in captivity. There has been no written record of any other crossbreeding between lions and jaguars. Number 5. The Iron Age pig. The Iron Age pig is a hybrid between a wild boar and a domestic Tamworth pig meant to recreate the type of pig represented by prehistoric works of the Iron Age in ancient Europe. A project to create them under the name Iron Age pig started in the early 1980s. In many areas, a variable of mixtures of these hybrids and feral pigs of all domesticated original stock have become invasive species. Their status as pest animals has reached crisis proportions in Australia, parts of Brazil, and parts of the United States, and the animals are often freely hunted in hopes of eradicating them or at least reducing them to a controllable population. When bred intentionally, the hybrids are intended to visually recreate the backbreed look of pigs represented in the prehistoric artworks of the Iron Age and in early ancient Egypt. Now, generally, they are only raised in Europe for a specialty meat market, and in keeping with their heritage, are generally more aggressive and harder to handle than pure domestic pigs. Number 4. Beefalo. Beefalo constitute a hybrid offspring of domestic cattle, usually a male in managed breeding programs, and the American bison, usually a female in managed breeding programs.
Accidental crosses were noticed as long ago as 1749 in the southern states of North America during British colonization. Cattle and bison were first intentionally crossbred during the mid-19th century. In 1983, the three main beefalo registration groups reorganized under the American Beefalo World Registry. Until November 2008, there were two beefalo associations, the American Beefalo World Registry and American Beefalo International. These organizations joined to form American Beefalo Association Incorporated, which currently operates as the registering body for beefalo in the United States. Now, the breed was created to combine the characteristics of both animals for beef production. A recent USDA study showed beefalo meat, like bison meat, actually tended to be lower in fat and cholesterol. They are also thought to produce less damage to the rangeland than cattle. Personally, I just think saying beefalo is fun. You should try it. Number 3. Green sea slug. Possibly the most unusual hybrid animal on this list is the green sea slug. It's a sea slug that incorporates genetic material from the algae it eats into its own DNA. So it's part sea slug, part algae. The strange result is a plant-animal hybrid that can consume food like an animal or create its own nutrients via photosynthesis. Scientists call these sea slugs emerald green alcia. Their ability to turn solar energy into food is what gives them their brilliant green hue. Scientists acknowledge that they'll have to do more research in order to determine how this phenomenon happens, but as of now, this is their only successful instance of gene transfer from one type of complex organism to another. This creature can be found along the east coast of the United States, including the states of Massachusetts, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Maryland, Rhode Island, Florida, and Texas. They can also be found as far north as Nova Scotia, Canada, and are most commonly found in salt marshes, tidal marshes, pools, and shallow creeks. Number 2. Hybrid crocodile. The only known hybrid crocodile in the world is named Yai. Yai's parents are a saltwater crocodile and a Siamese crocodile. The crossbreeding happened only because its parents were kept together in a zoo. It wouldn't have occurred in the wild as these two types of crocodiles have different habitats. Yai is huge. And in the year 2000, Guinness World Records said he was the world's largest crocodile held in captivity at 19 feet and 8 inches, which is as tall as a giraffe. He also weighed 2,645 pounds, which is almost the amount of 2 cows. Since then, Yai has grown even more and is now 21 feet long. He's located at the Samtapukran Crocodile Farm and Zoo in Thailand. I hope I said that right. All I gotta say is I'm glad he's in captivity. I can't imagine how I would react if I saw him out in the wild. And coming in at number 1, the super cow. The super cow, also known as a Belgian blue cow, is a breed of beef cattle from Belgium. The Belgium's blue's extremely lean, hyper-sculpted, ultra-muscular physique is termed double muscling. The double muscling phenotype is a heritable condition resulting in an increased number of muscle fibers instead of the normal enlargement of individual muscle fibers. This particular trait is shared with another breed of cattle known as Piedmontese. Both of these breeds have an increased ability to convert feed into lean muscle, which causes these particular breeds' meat to have a reduced fat content and reduced tenderness. The Belgian blue is named after its typically blue-gray mottled hair, however, its actual color can vary from white to black. The Belgian blue has been exported to many parts of the world. It is reported by DATIS by 24 countries in Africa, the Americas, Europe, and Oceania. Of these, 10 report population data. In 2022, the world population was estimated to be around 107,875. Now, double-muscled cows routinely experience dystocia difficulty in parturition, even when bred to normal beef bulls or dairy bulls because of a narrower birth canal. The birth weight and width of the calf also may be higher than in animals without the double muscling gene. People also think it's unfair to breed these animals because of their difficulty walking due to the muscles and how big they are. These cows are absolutely jacked, and I would not want to run into one of them or get in a fight with it.
Starting off this countdown, we have the Zubron. This is a cross between domestic cattle and the European bison. In fact, the European bison, aka the Wisent, was once threatened by extinction, but now they were making a comeback. The Zubron were first created by Leopold Walicki in 1847, but scientists didn't breed the first fertile Zubron until 1960. In fact, after World War I, a lot of people believed that the Zubron was going to replace domestic cattle because of their low susceptibility to disease and their durability. All throughout the 1950s and 60s, scientists were working on creating these creatures in labs. Over the course of 16 years, 71 Zubrons were born. Experiments continued to run on these animals until the late 1980s. That's when the experiments were shut down. One of the reasons being they were unsatisfied with the results. But also they were scared that the zebron would crossbreed with the endangered wild wisent and then contaminate the whole gene pool. Now there's just one herd left and it's located in a national park. Moving on to number 9, we have the human rodent hybrid. And if you guys are liking this video so far, make sure to give it a big thumbs up. But you heard me correctly. It's a human rodent hybrid. A stem cell biologist from Tokyo has been trying to grow human cells in mice and rats and then transplant those embryos into surrogate animals. So his experiments start by injecting some cells into rat and mice embryos. But those rodents have been genetically manipulated so they can't make pancreases for themselves. His hope is that the rodents' bodies will use the human cells to then make a pancreas. Here's the thing though. While conducting the experiments, if they find that the rats are starting to develop a human-type brain, then they have to stop the experiments on them. It's part of the agreement he has with the government. They don't want a humanized animal coming into existence. Still, we can say that there are some humanized rodents out there. Moving on to number 8, we have the leopon. Lions, no tigers, but leopards, oh my. See what I did there? A leopon is a mix between a male leopard and a female lion. If you thought leopards or lions alone were scary, wait until you take a look at this bad boy. So the leopon literally looks like it's fake. It has the head of a lion, but the body of a leopard. They are beautiful, but imagine being hunted down by one of those. No thank you. In fact, they can grow to be larger than their full-grown leopard father. Also, they can last 20 years in the wild. On average, leopards live to be around 23 years old and lions only 13, so that's pretty impressive. The first reference to the leopon was made in the 1st century, but it wasn't until 1910 that someone saw one in real life and it was actually credible. But don't be fooled, leopards and lions aren't out there mating with each other. These animals were produced in captivity. They're very unlikely to occur naturally in the wild. In our 7th spot today, we have the Jeep. Or Geep. I don't know how you pronounce it, but I'm not talking about the car here. This is a mixture between a goat and a sheep. It's pretty cute, not gonna lie. But breeding the two can be a very risky game. Very few babies are carried to term, and even fewer manage to survive birth. Those that do survive have a bunch of genetic abnormalities. But people still cross the two together, which is sad because chances are most of the time it'll have a negative outcome. Coming in at number 6, we have the hybrid lions gone wrong. This is a sad example of breeding gone wrong. In 2006, nearly 24 crossbred lions in northern India were dying after they developed a mysterious disease. The disease was a result of inbreeding and a weakened gene pool. Nearly 80 lions were affected by this. The lions being born had weak hind legs and had difficulty walking and couldn't even run. They also had failing immune systems. Now, there's a wildlife law in India which prohibits the killing of animals. So basically, they just had to wait for these lions to die a slow, painful death on their own. It's a very tragic case of breeding gone wrong. Those poor lions. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the see-through frog. Scientists in Japan have managed to create a frog that has see-through skin, which is really freaking creepy if you ask me. So they created this frog by crossing 2 kinds of recessive color mutant frogs together. They did this through artificial insemination. And the offspring ended up producing frogs with translucent skin. Now there's a lot more to it than that, but that's just the simplified way to describe it. Now they actually have a good reason for doing this. Having frogs with visible organs means you don't need to dissect them for medical research. Instead, you can just observe by looking through them. So this reduces the need for dissecting and killing innocent frogs. In our 4th spot today, we have the glow-in-the-dark cats. No, I am not making this up. It is a real thing. Basically, these glow-in-the-dark cats were created in an attempt to stop HIV/AIDS. So the virus responsible for HIV in humans is similar to the feline immunodeficiency virus, FIV. So what they did was insert a gene that produces a fluorescent protein called GFP. This is produced naturally in jellyfish, but it's what gives these kitties a green glow. Then they also inserted a gene that blocks the FIV virus into unfertilized eggs of the cat. When the cat gave birth to the kitties, if they glowed green, that meant they also had the anti-FIV gene. They hope that these experiments will one day lead to them finding a way to make humans resistant to HIV. In our third spot today, we have the infertile pink bollworm. In 2005, the pink bollworm was becoming a huge problem in cotton farming. These invasive pests lay eggs on cotton balls. Then once they hatch, the larvae eat the seeds and damage the cotton fibers. It was getting so bad that scientists came up with this really weird way to get rid of them. Basically, they created sterile pink bollworms. They did this by treating a bunch of moths with radiation. The radiation would damage their reproduction cells, but it wouldn't kill the insect. That way, when they encountered a normal pink bollworm and the two mated, bam! It would create an infertile pink bollworm. So for 4 years, 2 billion pink bollworm moths were released into Arizona's cotton fields. They literally would fly an airplane above the fields and then drop millions of these moths down onto the crops, and thankfully, it worked. Imagine if their plan didn't work, there would be billions more pink bollworms out there. It could have destroyed the crops completely. Even the scientists admitted that it was a very risky move. Coming in at number 2, we have the killer bees. Did you know that killer bees were accidentally created by scientists? See, this kind of stuff scares me. Like, what else have scientists created by accident? Basically, in the 1950s, a biologist was commissioned by the Brazilian government to create a species of bees that would increase honey production. But along the way, things went wrong. The biologist himself didn't have much experience with animal breeding. In the end, bees from southern Africa and local Brazilian honeybees mated, and it produced these angry killer bees. And then, of course, thousands of these killer bees accidentally escaped. Now, they get their name because when pissed off, they have been known to chase people down for more than a quarter mile. And on top of that, their stings are very painful. So these bees were literally created in a lab by accident. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the Rabbit Man. For this one, we have a hybrid between a human and a rabbit. Again, I'm not making this up. The first successful experiment was done in 2003 in Shanghai. A team of scientists managed to fuse human cells with rabbit eggs. In the United States, scientists have been trying to do the same, but their attempts have been unsuccessful. But in Shanghai, they managed to pull this off. This experiment was done to see if it could be used to grow cells or tissues for transplant patients. But in the end, they only allowed the human rabbit to develop for a couple of days before they had to destroy it, and then just harvest it for its stem cells. Either way, they still created a human-rabbit hybrid.
At number 10 now, we have the hipster birds. That is the nicknames being given to some birds in Australia that are changing to make themselves heard in big, noisy cities. A team of researchers recorded birds across a variety of urban and rural environments to see if there was a difference in the frequency of their songs. Calling and songs are a key part of male birds defending their territories and attracting a female mate. It's bad news for them if they can't be heard over the noise of a city. The results were surprising. On average, city birds were singing 195 Hz higher and calling 90 Hz higher than their rural counterparts. As cities get even more busy, you may start hearing incredibly loud birds as they attempt to make themselves heard. Alright, moving on to number 9 now, we have the super mouse. As long as humans have lived in large groups, mice and rats are never too far away. One of the preferred methods of getting rid of them for many years has been poison, but that might not always work anymore. Scientists recently found a super mouse hybrid in Germany. It was a genetic mix of the ordinary house mouse and its poison-resistant cousin, the Algerian mouse. The result is a mouse that is perfectly adapted to live in our homes, but is also resistant to warfarin, one of the most common poisons used in rodent control. The research team's lead author, Michael Kahn, said, "We've caught evolution in the act." Great, now they just need to catch the mouse. At number 8 now, we have the tawny owl. This is a common owl found across the forests of Europe, and their colours range from brown to pale brown, grey, or even white. The white and grey helps them blend in with snow during the winter and hide from predators. Researchers in Finland noticed there has been a nationwide increase in more brown coloured owls over the past 48 years. In that same time, the winters in Finland have got a lot milder. If it's warmer there, there's less snow, which means the whiter owls are more easily spotted by predators against the backdrop of a browny green forest. If this continues, we may only see brown tawny owls in the future. Moving on to number 7 now, we have the bedbug. Bedbugs love us. They feed on our blood and live in our beds, hence the name. Pesticides used to kill them have helped us keep them under control for the most part, but they've started changing. One study in America found that bedbugs
bedbugs in New York, a place known for its infestations, are now 250 times more resistant to pesticides than bedbugs in Florida. It only takes a few to be naturally resistant and survive for the whole population to end up resistant. The more chemicals we use on these bedbugs, the tougher they become. This sounds like the plot to a movie, a bad one. Next up at number 6 now, we have the green lizard. Florida's native green lizards have traditionally been found living on low branches and tree trunks. This was until brown lizards moved into the area in recent years. Suddenly, there was half the food available and double the competition, so the green lizards climbed up to the treetops to survive. They needed to adapt to better cling to these smaller, smooth branches in the treetops. Their toe pads grew bigger and their scales got stickier to achieve this, and it all happened in just 15 years, about 20 generations. Scientists were shocked at the degree and quickness of this evolution and are curious to see what will happen in the next 15 years. Alright, at the number 5 spot now, we have pink salmon. This fish swims from the ocean and up freshwater streams to spawn their next generation. Some of them migrate earlier than others, it's all decided in their genes. Scientists noticed that in Alaska, one salmon population was now migrating about 2 weeks earlier in the year than it was 40 years ago. They looked at the data over that time and realized that fish with genes for late migration had all but disappeared from the population. Over that same time period, local water temperature had increased by about 1 degree Celsius due to climate change. Scientists argue that these early migrating fish are better fit to handle the warmer waters, and this change will only continue as temperatures increase. Next up at number 4 now, we have the house finch. In Tucson, Arizona, house finches have developed longer and wider beaks than their rural cousins so that they can more easily consume sunflower seeds in bird feeders. This is an interesting thing to observe in animals when they begin to adapt to better suit a human-made environment. If this trend continues, you may end up with house finches perfectly designed to live in neighborhoods and almost exclusively feeding from bird feeders with their perfectly shaped beaks. Alright, at number 3 now, we have the mosquito. The London Underground is the oldest subway system in the world, over 100 years old in fact. In that time, many creatures have grown to call it home, including mosquitoes. The mosquitoes that live here have been so isolated from mosquitoes on the surface that they have become an almost entirely different species. Firstly, they only feed on humans, which makes sense because there aren't many other animals that ride the subway. They don't hibernate during the winter and they don't require much space to mate. These differences have grown so much that the underground mosquitoes can no longer breed with the ones on the surface. They are simply too different. This has all happened in a space of just a few decades, so who knows what will happen in the future. At number 2 now, we have the anole lizard. Just like the house finch we talked about earlier, this animal is adapting to its new urban environment in Puerto Rican cities. In the short time the species has been in these cities, they have already evolved to grip and more easily move on artificial surfaces like glass, concrete or brick. This is something that the nearby forest lizards simply couldn't do. One of the researchers said they chased a lizard that ran straight up a 30-foot window and couldn't catch them. I hope they did other research except just chasing. And finally at number 1 now, we have city ants. Cities are hot. They absorb and retain heat, sometimes making them up to 12 degrees warmer than their surrounding environments. That difference is big enough to have a real impact on organisms living there. Scientists in Brazil studied the effect of this on leafcutter ants in Sao Paulo. They tested ants from inside and outside the city for their heat tolerance. When subjected to 42 degrees Celsius, ants from within the city took 20% longer to lose mobility than ants from outside. Now this suggests that hot cities have forced these ants to become more heat resistant than they normally would be. Is there a limit to this, or are we going to see some sort of super ant emerge in our lifetime?
Starting off this countdown, we have the growler bear. The growler bear, or the Pizzly bear, is a cross between a polar bear and a brown grizzly bear. This actually happened naturally in the wild, which is kind of hard to believe. Basically, because of climate change destroying the bears' habitats, they started breeding with each other out of desperation, which is actually pretty sad. It's believed that the first growler bear was discovered in 2006. On April 16th, 2006, a hunter named Jim Martell was out hunting when he captured a growler bear. At first, he thought it was just a polar bear, but officials took a look at it and noticed it had strange features. Later, it was determined to be a growler bear. Or Pizzly bear. It's really funny to say. In our 9th spot, we have a zorse. Any guesses as to what this animal is mixed with? Well, it's a mix between a zebra and a horse. Or sometimes a donkey too. Other people refer to them as zebula, or zebrule, or a zebra mule. These animals were created after crossbreeding a male zebra with a female horse. The offspring look more like a horse than a zebra, but they still got the identifying stripes. The first zorse was created during the 19th century by Charles Darwin. Now, they are still around to this day, but they are extremely rare. This is because zorses are infertile or sterile. They can't reproduce on their own. So the only way to get more of these bad boys is to get someone to crossbreed them themselves. Moving on, number 8, we have the jaglion, or jaglion, I don't know. It's a kind of a weird name, not gonna lie, but this animal is a cross between a jaguar and a lion. And these are actually naturally born. The first jaglion was unintentionally bred. It happened when a lion and a jaguar coexisted in the same zoo together. They were raised together and, one thing led to another and boom, baby jaglion. Not gonna lie, these things are beautifully terrifying. They are so unique and cool looking, but also I would never want to come face to face with one. Now, let me share with you a quick little love story between a jaguar named Diablo and a lion named Lola. The two were raised side by side and were inseparable. When Lola got mature, they kept Diablo away from her so that they would never mate. But whenever they were apart, both animals would grow depressed. It got so bad to the point where Lola wouldn't even eat. So they brought them back together, and bada bing bada boom, they had 2 babies together. So cute. Moving on to number 7, we have the human Z. It is so weird and uncomfortable putting this one on the list. But a human Z is a cross between a human and a chimpanzee. Yeah, I already know what you're thinking, but no, not that. Let me explain. Serious attempts have been made throughout the years to cross a chimp with a human. Since we're so similar in a genetic way, people believe that it's possible to do this. Ilya Ivanich Ivanov was the first person to attempt to create a human-chimp hybrid. I believe he started in 1918 and continued these experiences throughout the 1920s. During that time, the Soviet Union was also doing the same experiments. In 2019, rumor has it that a team of researchers from the Salk Institute for Biological Studies in the US successfully completed this. It's kind of creepy, I know. In our 6th spot, we have the Iron Age pig. This is a big, mean old pig, literally. So the Iron Age pig is a cross between a domestic pig and a wild boar. That's just so wrong to me on so many levels. Poor little Miss Piggy. Now, look at this thing. It's huge and looks tough and mean. In fact, they are considered very hostile animals. It's because wild boars are typically more aggressive. That's one of the traits that gets passed along to their offsprings. Now, they get their name because this pig has many characteristics of domesticated animals from the Iron Age period. Hello, there you go, Iron Age pig. It's quite fascinating. These pigs are generally bred in Europe for the sole purpose of selling and eating them. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the green sea slug. As strange as this one is, it's actually really interesting. Honestly though, this has to be the weirdest hybrid on this list. And that's because it's part animal and part plant. Yeah, it's a mix between a sea slug and algae. Yeah, algae. This sea slug was going around eating algae, and eventually the algae became part of its DNA. It's very strange. Soon, green sea slugs were born and contained chlorophyll, just like a plant. In fact, this is the first animal able to make chlorophyll like a plant. They literally can turn solar energy into food. Again, it's quite weird, but also fascinating. In our 4th spot, we have the wholphin, which is really fun and funny to say. So a wholphin is a mix between an Atlantic bottlenose dolphin and a false killer whale. In fact, these are considered very, very rare. The first recorded wholphin was born in 1981 in Tokyo SeaWorld, but sadly, he passed away after 200 days. Now, the first wholphin born in the US was at Sea Life Park in Hawaii in 1985, but she had trouble reproducing. Her baby wholphins sadly passed away. Some say they have seen wholphins out in the wild, but these sightings have never been confirmed. But if you do see one, it's very rare. Coming in at number 3, we have the Enviro pig. Okay, this one, I take it back. This one is probably the weirdest one on this list. Basically, an Enviro pig is an environmentally friendly pig. Basically, pigs' excrements are high in phosphorus. This phosphorus then ends up in lakes and rivers and oceans and can cause a boom of algae. So scientists were like, hey, let's just breed a pig with less toxic waste. And that's what they did. Enviro pigs are pigs with up to 65% less phosphorus in their excrements. This pig was first created in 1999 at the University of Guelph's farm in Canada. This pig had its phytase gene attached to a piece of mouse DNA. Basically, in the end, it made the pig produce an enzyme to help it better digest plant phosphorus, which is a nutrient in its feed. Voila! From there, Enviro pigs were born. In our second spot, we have the Belgian super cow. Now, when they said super cow, they weren't joking, because take a load of this cow. It's monstrous. As many of you guys know, cows are my favorite animal, but this one terrifies me. It's massive. Like, look at its muscles. I'm sorry, but no animal should be as ripped as that. So basically, this super cow was created back in the 1800s when Belgian scientists and farmers mixed native cattle with shorthorn cattle. Then over the time, they would select the biggest and strongest offsprings of each variety and get them to breed together. So on and so on, bam, you got this super cow, which is definitely the biggest and strongest. So maybe let's stop doing that because this cow is soon gonna get too big for its own good and like take over the world or something. And in our number one spot, we have the human-pig hybrid. Yes, this is a real thing. Scientists at the Salk Institute for Biological Sciences in California have created a human-pig hybrid. Now you're probably wondering, why on earth would they do this? Well, they did this in hopes that one day they could grow human organs inside of pigs and other animals instead of waiting for a donor. So in 2017, an embryo was placed in an adult pig for 4 weeks. Then this was taken out and analyzed. And the embryo survived and contained some human cells. Now they're going to figure out if pig embryos can handle enough human cells to create human organs. It's very creepy in my opinion.
And we're starting off this list with rabbit-human hybrids. Back in 2003, scientists in Shanghai successfully fused human cells with rabbit eggs in a laboratory dish. And the crazy thing was, they survived until they were disposed of and harvested for their stem cells. So it's unclear how long they could have survived and whether the thing would have actually reached past the embryo stage. We could have had a real half-person, half-rabbit monster living amongst us. They'd be about 20 years old now. Not sure why the scientists didn't try this again and actually let the thing live. Maybe it just would have been too freaky. Or maybe they did try it again and there are a whole bunch of rabbit people hiding away somewhere in China just waiting to be unleashed into the world to do God knows what. Imagine how freaky a rabbit person would be though. A mangy, almost hairless rabbit with a human-y kind of face hopping around. Human-y, that's a new word. At our number 9 spot, we have the chimpanzee. We're gonna chill in China for a little bit longer here. This apparently happened back in 1967. This story is not 100% verified, but according to 2 scientists in Shenyang, they were able to impregnate a chimpanzee with the seed of a human, which I very much hope done artificially. They were hoping to create a more advanced form of chimpanzee that could hopefully learn to speak, and were even hoping to send it off and do experiments in space. I think the more advanced form of chimpanzee is us. I think that's what we are. But anyway, apparently the chimp did get pregnant, now carrying a human-chimp hybrid in its belly, but the creature was never born as their lab and work was destroyed by revolutionaries and the chimp died while 3 months into its pregnancy. Not sure about this story. On one hand, this all sounds pretty far-fetched, but on the other, as I said, we do share about 98.8% of our DNA with chimps, so stranger things have happened. Number 8, mice with human livers. So this is an interesting case because I'm actually kind of on board with it. It's a great alternative to testing on chimpanzees. I shall explain. In 2010, researchers at the Salk Institute for Biological Studies in California were able to genetically modify a mouse so that it had an almost human liver. The aim of the game here was to create an animal they could test on for diseases that only humans and chimpanzees get. In the past, we've only been able to test stuff like hepatitis B and C and malaria on chimps, so being able to use mice instead, still not ideal, but it might be the best alternative. Basically, the goal is to infect these genetically modified mice with whatever disease they're testing on, and then attempt to treat them. Could make for pretty big strides in the medical field. At number 7, let's take a step away from actual science for a moment and discuss something a little bit more mysterious, the cryptid known as Owlman. I was considering putting the Mothman at this spot, but we've all heard about the Mothman plenty of times before. The first reported account of this terrifying creature dates back to 1976 in the village of Maunan in Cornwall. 2 young girls had encountered the beast, describing what they saw to be an almost man-sized owl with glowing red eyes. It had been seen hovering above the church tower. Since that fateful day, more and more reports began swooping in about this mysterious owl creature, and till this day we still don't know what this thing is or was. Was it just a hoax, or possibly a really big owl? Probably, but it could have been a human-owl hybrid, which was the result of some horrendous scientific experimentation. You know, that's also a probability. So now we're going to talk about another mouse-related hybrid. This time it's mice with human brains. Yeah, it turns out we actually got pretty close to making Pinky in the Brain a reality, because I think sometimes scientists just go, why not? Let's just do it. Back in 2014, scientists were able to imbue several lab mice with millions of human brain cells. The mice lived, though, after about a year. Almost every cell in their brains had been replaced by human ones. Now, my human brain automatically goes to these mice now performing complex math equations and playing checkers with the scientists, but that's not what happened. Turns out their memory just got way better. The way scientists tested this was by playing a certain noise, then they'd send a small electric shock through the mice, and the next time they played whatever that noise was, they took note of how the mice reacted, bracing for the incoming electric shock, and they were able to determine that the memory of these mice was 4 times stronger than that of a normal mouse. At number 5, we have human brain cells in monkeys. So Chinese scientists made headlines recently by successfully adding human brain cells to monkeys. This breakthrough involved injecting human stem cells to monkey embryos, leading to the creation of these kind of chimeric embryos, organisms composed of cells from these 2 different species. The goal here was to gain insight into brain development and disorders like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's diseases by studying how the human cells integrated and interacted with the monkey brains. By looking at how the injected human cells behaved and developed in the monkey brains, they hoped to gain more insight into brain functions and diseases that could be otherwise unattainable through traditional means. But it doesn't take a genius to realize that the creation of animals, especially monkeys with human brain cells, is a pretty unnerving idea. If you've ever seen Planet of the Apes, you know how things could turn out here. Next up, we have reptilians. The presence of reptilian humanoids seeping their way into our society has been a relatively well-known conspiracy theory for years. There are some folks that are just 100% convinced that a number of celebrities and politicians and other powerful members of our society are reptilian creatures in disguise. Folks report their eyes changing briefly, showing their true lizard-like pupils below the surface of their nearly flawless human skin suits, or their smooth skin starting to morph into the scaly-like texture that reptiles are so renowned for. And where are these creatures said to come from? Some say outer space, and some say there are cabals of reptilians living in layers deep beneath the surface of the earth, organizing themselves to enact world domination on the inferior species above, which is us. And at number 3, we have cows with human milk. Back in 2011, Chinese scientists were able to genetically produce a herd of 300 cows able to produce milk that was 80% similar to that of human breast milk. It contained nutrients not found in cow milk that are essential to human beings, and they were hoping to mass produce this hybrid cow human milk, getting it on the shelves of every grocery store. Suffice to say, it never really took off. Now, I don't know how this was accomplished. I am not a scientist, surprisingly, but I do know that this is something I would never drink. This isn't the only case of cows being modified with human genes to make their milk more closer to ours. This same process was also used on goats in Argentina, and this type of milk has been tested on pigs, and apparently they were fine, but I don't know about you. I just get a little pukey at the idea of chugging down milk, even just normal milk, by the way, but genetically modified milk from a lab cow, I'll pass on that one, thank you. And like I said, I'd pass on standard milk too. I just don't think we're supposed to really be consuming the stuff in high quantities like past infancy. But I don't know, there's a lot of debates about that. Number 2, the Loveland frog. Oh boy, do I love the Loveland frog. Yes, we're back into cryptid territory here. I can't help it. This weird and wacky creature is one of the most famous cryptids in the fine state of Ohio. This is not just one cryptid though. It's a group of 3 to 4 foot tall humanoid frog creatures. Now, the legends started gaining steam back in 1955 when a local man claimed to have seen not 1, not 2, but 3 of these froggish beings just hanging out under a bridge. He described them as being hairless, with large mouths, with no lips, and with a greenish tint to their skin. They also had a wand-like device that emitted a strange smell of almonds. In 1972, a police officer also claimed to have seen a large frog creature, saying he actually shot at one of them as it leapt across the road. So, did someone slip something into that man's drink in 1955? Was he just making it up? Did the cop in 1972 just fire at a very large lizard? Very possible. Or scientists were doing some nefarious frog experiments over there in Ohio. And knowing what I've learned about Ohio over my time spent doing this job, that would not surprise me in the slightest. Coming in at number 1 though, we have pigs with human organs. So this is something that's being continually researched. And it's actually pretty interesting and potentially very useful because the purpose of this is to create farm animals that can be harvested for important organs like human hearts and lungs, which could be life-saving for people needing replacements. Not sure if I'd want my new heart coming from a mutated pig monster, but I guess the chips are down. You gotta take what you can get. Japanese scientist Hiromatsu Nakuichi is one of the leading scientists on this project and is operating in the United States to help bring it to reality. They've been able to create hundreds of pig-human embryos, but none of them with the amount of human DNA necessary to accomplish their goals. But their research continues, and I'm confident that one day we'll be able to visit a disgusting pig person farm with fresh new organs we can choose from in order to keep ourselves alive for as long as we want. That's the future that I want.
At number 10, we have Kama. So we're gonna start off with Kama. This is a cross between a camel and a llama, or a comma, you could say. And while you may be thinking, okay, this isn't too wacky, I need to remind you the stats of both parents of this creature. A llama weighs about 130 to 200 kilograms, or 300 to 450 pounds. In comparison, a dromedary or one-humped camel weighs 400 to 600 kilograms. That's 900 to 1300 pounds, which is twice the size. So now we are all thinking, how? I will tell you that this blend was done science-y through artificial means, and the biggest success story was Rama, or Rama, the Kama, or Kama, Rama the Kama, who lived to be 14 years old. And now that we've seen a Kama, let's look at another llama hybrid, the Swama. This fake one. Ah yes, majestic. I can imagine it now, flying before nosediving when it sees I have snacks. Stunning. But on to another real one at number 9, Narluga. While this one wasn't caught on camera, we do have a photo of the skull, and there have been photoshopped interpretations of a Narluga. The skull was given to researchers by an Inuit hunter that was part of a group that caught 3 of these whales during a subsistence hunt. The blend of narwhal and beluga was described as uniformly gray, with pectoral fins shaped like a beluga's and tails shaped like a narwhal's on sciencenews.org. It was confirmed through DNA analysis that the mother was a narwhal and the father was a beluga, and these have been said to not been spotted since this skull was discovered. But it is important to note that humans don't frequently visit the Arctic to whale watch for research or otherwise, so keep that in mind. And yes, I did promise it, have a funny photoshopped animal. This is a beluga horse hybrid, and again, majestic, but I'm kind of like judgy of the balance because it's kind of hard to believe it's like a bipedal animal but has no arms, so like how would the balance work? I can barely balance with my 2 arms. Imagine it's called a belugarse. You can name it for yourself if you like, but what if it falls forward? And then have another aquatic Arctic find, the penguin whale.
This one's honestly creepy and it looks kind of like the villain in a story. So let's get back to the facts. At number 8, we have a hinny. And why you think hinny is just my bad impersonation of RuPaul, well, you're right, but it's something else as well. You may have heard of a mule, but a hinny is the other hybrid equine with similar parentage. Both a mule and a hinny are the result of breeding a horse with a donkey, but a mule has a horse as a mother and a hinny has a donkey as a mother. Let that sink in. Now, both tend to live longer than their parents and are more resistant to disease, but mules are more popular since they tend to be stronger and have better endurance. And now that I've told you about hinnies, let's look at this other fake blended creation, another equine, the horse seal. Moment of silence for how funny this one looks. It's one of my faves. At number 7, we have zonkey. So if hinny wasn't wild enough for you here, for real life, have a zonkey. A blend of a zebra and a donkey, and yeah, it's real. Quite rare though, because it's not as fertile of a species. Also because donkeys and zebras don't have the same number of chromosomes, so very rare. They look like their donkey parent in their physical stature and their zombie parent with their patterned fur, so aka a striped donkey. And while they are rare, they happen every once in a while when there's a love affair between a zebra and a donkey, two equine species unalike in chromosomes, in some fair zoo where we lay our scene. From ancient grudge break to new mutiny where civil blood makes civil hands unclean. Just Romeo and Juliet, but with the donkey and a zebra. That was weird. Take it. And it's not as dramatic as Romeo and Juliet, but let me have my moment here, okay? Here's your photo of something else. It's a shorse. Shark horse. If this was running at you, what would you do? Let's go on to number 6, a leopon. So you've heard of a liger or a tigon, but what about this fanciful cat? It's a cross between a lioness and a leopard. This is one type of cross that's most likely happening in captivity, but not unheard of in the wild. This resulting look is a cat nearly the size of a lion with shorter legs like a leopard, and they have spots like a leopard's but are paler, more like brown instead of black, and males grow short manes, not the big luscious ones. And honestly, they look unreal and kind of fake, as if a lion was spray painted with jaguar spots and mane was given like a bit of a haircut, but super cool. And you know what else is cool? This lion cross between a lion and a guinea pig. A guinea lion. I'm trying to do an accent, I don't know what it is. I can't really imagine being afraid of it because like look at the cute face, like no. Oh, but also look at this cute one, a squix. Just gosh darn adorable. But let's move on to number 5, Jeep, or Geep. No, I'm not talking about the car Jeep, this is spelled G-E-E-P, and I was probably right the second time saying it's a Geep. This hybrid is a chimera. In short, any Geep has 4 parents because it's the result of a combination of goat and sheep embryos. This mix of embryos is then put in the womb of a sheep or a goat until it's born. A successful Geep that was born had patches of sheepish wool and goatish hair. And whenever these are a success, they aren't able to have babies because goats and sheep have different numbers of chromosomes, as I've said before with the zonkey. But another break from science talk, look at this, a dunny! It's so fluffy. It's amazing and it's from my wildest dreams and I want 10 of them. On to number 4, a zoe. This is spelled D-Z-O or D-Z-O. The zoe is a hybrid of a yak and a cow. And here's a yak for reference, and here's a cow for reference, and then the resulting zoe. Some people call it a yakow, which I think is great because it has a really nice ring to it, kind of like ka-chow. Anyways, a zoe has a face similar to a cow, but has larger horns, and it is larger than both of its parents. And my favorite fact, that it can survive at an altitude of over 10,000 feet. Zows have pulmonary artery pressure that's low, which means it can survive breathing in air without risking pulmonary hypertension, aka it has very low blood pressure, so the arteries have less problems. And you know what would give me less problems? Having a spowl. This beautiful fake creature, it's a spider owl. 1, it has better eyeliner than me, and 2, is it spider sized or owl sized? I kinda wanna know because I would take both, but for different reasons. On to number 3, a growler bear. And this blend is becoming increasingly more common, likely due to climate change. Grizzly bears moving further north into polar bear territory, and the two are mingling. One example looks like a grizzly in its face shape and its paws, but has mostly white color that polar bears are known for, because polar bears are white. And what is uncommon is the pair. This is a penguin bear hybrid about the size of a teddy bear and probably really great at catching salmon. Yes, it's fake. Slightly more common is the bowl, an owl bear hybrid. I said bowl, I meant bowel. An owl bear hybrid that is super jacked but wise at the same time. Again, fake. Still adorable. On to number 2, another real one, the wholphin. A wholphin is the result of a false killer whale breeding with a bottlenose dolphin. This and this. Now, this one is a bit misleading. A false killer whale is technically a dolphin species, but it's still a staggering pairing. A wholphin is much bigger than a bottlenose dolphin and a bit darker too. This pairing has been seen in captivity as well as in the wild, and a cool story is that there's a pair of parents of a wholphin, and they were both actually in an Adam Sandler movie, 50 First Dates. So the mother of the wholphin was Punahele, and the father was Anui. If I'm pronouncing that wrong, I'm sorry, I tried. Here's another fake one, an elephant manatee, or fanatee if you will. Kind of brings snorkeling to a new level, and I can almost picture a fanatee just swinging its trunk and using it as a propeller to go forward. Kind of a funny visual. And I'll throw in another one. Here's a sharkopotamus. I already knew that a hippo could crush like a 4-foot tall person in their jaws, so like adding that kind of like, it's kind of, if that was in real life I'd be afraid of it, but thank you for that, Gibarama, for providing that visual. But let's go on to number 1. Scary animal hybrid, killer bees. Now this is a bee that was originally a hybrid of the African lowland honeybee with various other European honeybees. This cross became known as the Africanized bee. It was produced originally with the hopes of creating a bee with higher honey production, which is great intent, but instead it resulted in a more defensive bee. Victims of killer bee stings tend to receive 10 times more stings than from European honeybees, and during the original process of hybridizing, 26 swarms escaped the quarantine where they were produced in Brazil. And that was back in 1957, and the hybrid was spotted in North America by 1985 and the south of Texas by 1990. So that's real. But let's go on to something else. This is a hybrid of a ferret and a duck, so obviously a dare it, right?